He thought he had committed the perfect crime, poisoning his father and burying the evidence in the backyard. But years later, one investigation would uncover the horrifying truth. And what investigators eventually discovered shocked the entire town. In a quiet neighborhood in the small American town of Brookfield stood a simple house that hid a terrifying secret beneath its backyard. For years, no one suspected that a horrible crime had taken place there. At the center of the story was 28-year-old Ethan Walker. To neighbors, Ethan appeared quiet and reserved. He rarely spoke to anyone and mostly kept to himself. But behind closed doors, his life had been shaped by years of conflict with his father, Robert Walker. Robert was known as a strict and difficult man. Inside the home, he constantly criticized Ethan and treated him with harshness. Growing up, Ethan felt unwanted and humiliated. Over the years, that pain slowly turned into deep resentment. Eventually, the tension between father and son reached a breaking point. One summer, Ethan's mother left the house for a week-long trip to visit family in another state. Before leaving, she said goodbye to both her husband and son, completely unaware that her absence would soon lead to tragedy. With only Ethan and his father in the house, the atmosphere quickly became tense. Days into the trip, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. One evening, he prepared dinner in the kitchen just like he had done many times before. But this time, he secretly mixed poison into his father's meal. When Robert Walker sat down to eat, he had no idea that it would be his last dinner. Within minutes of finishing the meal, Robert began to feel sick. He struggled to breathe and collapsed onto the floor. Ethan watched as his father slowly died. Panic quickly set in. Ethan knew that if anyone discovered what had happened, his life would be over. Instead of calling for help, he chose to hide the crime. That night, he carried out a horrifying plan. He dismembered his father's body and secretly buried the remains in a shallow grave in the backyard. By the time his mother returned from her trip, there was no sign that anything had happened. Ethan calmly told her that he and his father had argued and that Robert had stormed out of the house. At first, the explanation seemed believable. Days passed, then months, and eventually years. Robert Walker was simply remembered as a man who had mysteriously disappeared. But the truth remained buried just beneath the soil behind the house. Years later, when investigators reopened old missing person cases, Robert Walker's disappearance caught their attention again. Detectives began asking questions, and soon Ethan's story started to fall apart. With a search warrant in hand, police arrived at the house and began digging in the backyard. What they found shocked everyone. Human bones were discovered beneath the soil. Forensic tests later confirmed the remains belonged to Robert Walker. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Ethan Walker finally confessed to the crime he thought he had hidden forever. The quiet backyard that once looked so ordinary had been hiding a dark and disturbing secret for years. Because no matter how deeply the truth is buried, it always finds its way back to the surface.